Welcome back, Socialist gamers. Thank you for joining us for the second episode in our playthrough of Workers and Resources, Soviet Republic. Just to recap what we did in our first episode, we generally opened this game up and did an introduction of all of the mechanics, as well as the overview of the map we're playing. As a reminder, that is entitled Black Sea Coast, and it is available as a download from Steam Workshop. Having set up an electricity grid, we supplied power to our area, obtaining oil, and then storing it in this oil tanker. And we have both the power coming from and a road going to a custom house in this western country trading in dollars. In this episode, we hope to expand our city, and I would like to start building a town that will supply workers to our industry. And my eventual goal is to populate this large area between two rivers, which is this nice flat plain. I think that would work quite well. And expand our industry and resource base so that we can go on our glorious path towards autonomy. Alright, so let's get to it. Let's go ahead and start dragging our road. So I think for now it can be a gravel road since we don't have many vehicles. And we can put it down here and down there. And I'm going to situate our town over here, which I think would be nice. We have a river here that provides a nice curve. We actually have this other custom house here, which we could utilize as well, although this one does not have a rail connection. But it's nice to know that that's there. And my plan was to build a railroad coming from the custom house where we can trade, parallel this road down through here where we could put down a oil loading and unloading system, and then it would follow the curve of this road and likely go through this area. So we don't want this road to be too close to this little hill because then we could not put the railroad through. And then it would follow down through this little flat area further out to the coast. So I think that this would be a decent location for our town. Looking at the minimap again, there aren't any real resources located near here. There's some uranium to the south of us, and some oil, which we've already started to obtain up here, so really there's no resources that we need to place on this plane. So we could use a significant area for farming. So again, going back to what I said in episode 1, you really want to avoid any areas with significant hills or mountains because it becomes a nightmare to place things, or very costly to terraform them, so we can probably use many of these flat areas for future farms. And that will be probably the next thing that I want to do after finishing the town. So let's talk about town planning. What I like to do is create a particular road so that it's delineated clearly from the road that goes between industrial areas. And I usually create a little intersection. And again, just to make sure most of our housing is removed from traffic. And then we can create another intersection here. So a key concept with towns that you have to remember is you have to supply all of your citizens' needs. Now, between having their needs supplied and being able to get them to work to fulfill jobs, we have two forms of town planning. The first system we can create is one with this large centralized town where all of your citizens live, and you build transportation networks, either the bus or the train, to take them to their places of work. And once they arrive to work, they do their job and then go back home. And so basically everything is centralized in the town, fulfilling all of their needs. A separate model would be to have small towns near industrial areas. So we would have a little tiny town over here that just supplies the basics, so namely food. And if the citizens have other needs, such as culture or healthcare or sports, they would then take transportation over to a larger central area, but they wouldn't have to do this every time. Now, in my experience playing this game, I did try to start out with a central town almost with every game and then try to export workers. And I'll tell you why I ultimately switched to the second option of having towns near industrial areas. As I noted in my game before, your workers only have a finite amount of hours that they can devote to an activity. They can travel for 5 hours. They will not wait for more than 1 hour for transportation. And they will work for 8 hours. After the 8 hours expires, they teleport automatically back to their house, so you don't need to worry about bringing them back on transit. Furthermore, when they're not at work, the citizens become passengers, and they need to fulfill their needs. And that takes place over 15 to 16 hours, during which they go around and ensure that they're able to get all the basic necessities such as food, healthcare, culture, and sports. And the same rules apply, that they will travel only for 5 hours and they will not wait for 1 hour. However, because the time that they're willing, or the time that they have allotted to fulfill their needs is double the time that they're able to work, I generally think it's much more efficient for them to travel longer distances and spend more time fulfilling their needs than to sacrifice the number of people that are able to get to work. So the central planning model with the central population point has a problem in that if the citizens get stuck in transit, so for instance there's a slow vehicle like a tractor blocking the bus and they can't pass, or there's a train that blocks traffic, if those citizens don't get to work, they teleport back home and you lose out on their job that they would have done, and that means you don't produce resources, and any factories or buildings that rely on that resource to produce other things will essentially not have that input. And so that directly affects your economy. If, however, your citizens are not able to fulfill their needs, there's actually a buffer built in the sense that most of their needs the citizens can increase to 150%. So if they go to a hospital and the hospital does not have a large number of people waiting, they will actually satisfy their need over 100%, and you'll have a built-in buffer such that when they try to go and to have their need met again, if they're not successful, it's not going to go down to 0, and so they'll try again. And it will actually take them a couple of times to try it, and only if they fail more than several times will they become unhappy and disloyal. And that's true on the setting that we're currently playing. It might be different on the hard setting, but the medium setting, that is true. And so I believe that all of those reasons are generally there to dissuade me from doing any more large centrally planned cities. And I'm actually curious what you guys think. So if you have experience with this or ideas or have an alternative model that you found works really well, I'm really curious to hear that in the comments below. I haven't heard or seen many videos that specifically address this aspect. now that the music changes, I also want to remind you that this is not the stock music that comes with the game. That was playing for episode 1. I do like the music. I think that's also one of the highlights of this game. However, it's a little bit limited in the current selection, and so I like to jazz it up and explore other socialist themes, as it were. So if you like the selection, this will be listed in the comments below. So getting back to our city, let's start building. So the first thing we need is obviously housing, so we go to our residential building option and construct flats. This bottom row has the highest number of workers, so this is the most efficient flat for this game currently. I generally like to build these last two. This option has 10 fewer workers, so 179 versus 189, but it has a higher quality of build. So let's just say I'm spoiling our future citizens. If we zoom in, you can see again that I can rotate my building, and so it has connections for both road and footpaths. So I'm going to just plop it down like so, and repeat it a couple of times. So now you might notice that I'm actually leaving a little bit of space in between these houses, instead of plopping them right close to one another. And the reason I do that is the workers or citizens who live in these buildings will eventually have to go to other places, such as the grocery store, a school, a kindergarten, etc., as part of their day-to-day life. Now, as I mentioned in episode 1, workers and citizens can only walk on either roads or footpaths. They cannot walk on grass. So if I built another object here, such as a school, and even if I linked it to a road, people living in this building would not be able to directly go to it, so they would have to go all the way around before they reached it. If, however, I built a footpath, this is clearly a much shorter distance. Now, there's a limit to how far citizens will walk, and that is 400 meters. If any building is over 400 meters, then your population cannot reach it, and you have to supply them with transportation. So they either need to take a train or a bus. Otherwise, that building will not service those individuals. The reason I leave space is because I want to ensure that all these buildings have footpath connections to maximize the ability of the citizens to get around. And so what I'm doing here is connecting all of these such that when we do build things up here in the north area, they'll have a much shorter distance to get to where they're going. And if I put these too close together, it'll actually give me a message that the distance is too short to create a footpath. And then we'll just drop some of them down right there. Again, you can see that how atrocious the lines are. They're not straight at all, but as I mentioned before, this is kind of as good as this game gets. So that would be our buildings. Now, let's go ahead and plan for a shopping center. So because this is going to be a larger town that's going to have most of the culture and other buildings to meet citizens' needs, I will plan on making this a little bit bigger. And I want to future-proof it, which is a large issue with this game. You kind of have to think about future-proofing all the time. And so, as I said before, we're going to have a rail run along this road and down into the flat space below. So we could also have a rail curving up here and delivering supplies to stock our shopping center when we are fully sufficient. And so with that in mind, let's start designing our shopping area. So we go to Equipment for Citizens, and here are the shop options. We have a grocery store which just sells food and meat, a small store that sells clothes and electronics, a shopping center that sells all four, and a small shopping center which is the same but smaller amounts. So, as I said before, we'll do grocery stores in our industrial areas, but larger towns will need a small shopping center. So your citizens will, again, travel to get clothes and electronics, and those needs are definitely less than food and meat. They absolutely need food, and they are unhappy if they don't get meat. So if we select the small shopping center and zoom in, we can see that this has a new connection we haven't seen before. So it has a road connection, which is connecting, and then they have footpaths, and they have these two yellow arrows. So these represents factory connections, and we briefly reviewed them in episode 1. So what these represent are basically automatic connections to supply this particular building with a particular good. And let's start placing this. So if I place this shopping center in the middle here, I'm assured that I know from experience that this is enough of a distance for all of these people in these buildings to walk over here, even with this road. But we'll cut that distance with a footpath later. So again, if we select the footpath, the factory connection option, we can see both of our factory connection arrows. So we have 3 options. We can create a direct factory connection. So if I build a building directly abutting this, it will show me a template for a direct factory connection. Now, that's generally the preferable option if you can get by with it. What that does, it automatically transfers whatever items I have in my new building to this building. So if this building sells it, so in this case this sells food, and I have a warehouse that has food, all I have to do is load the warehouse with food, and it'll automatically transfer food to my store. That's really the best case scenario, because then I do not have to waste gas, I don't have to waste money buying trucks or other transportation to then load this grocery store, this shopping center separately. And so whenever you can, you want to try to maximize this gameplay mechanic. Now, the factory connection has to be direct. It can't have too many bends, so it'll say things like an error message of you can't make it because it's too many angles. And you also can't make it very long, so it's not going to go all the way down here. It has a finite distance that it will travel. And so what do you do if your factory connection requires additional distance, or you can't really connect it directly despite trying? So you have these 2 other options. The first option here is basically just a 4-way connection. So this connection allows me to hook up more than one building to another. So you can imagine if I had 3 other buildings here, I only have 2 connections in my shopping center, so I cannot have 3 inputs. And so the only way I can solve that is by means of this. If I add this to the number of factory connections, I can then hook up additional inputs. The other option is a forklift garage, which does the same thing, but it also has road access. So a key concept is that the dynamic of one building automatically supplying another building does not occur if you have anything in between those 2 structures. In other words, unless you have a direct factory connection from one building to the other, you will need some form of transportation to transfer the goods. So in this case, if I build this factory connection, and then I put in another building here, even though it hooks up to this factory connection, so in this case a warehouse, this warehouse will not supply my shopping center because there's something in between the 2 structures. And so how do we solve that problem? And so in order for this to actually work and supply my shopping center, I would need to use the forklift garage. And so this contains forklifts that you can buy, up to 4. And what they do is they will traverse the factory connections, go to the warehouse, load an object that I want or can designate, and unload it at my shopping center. And they don't necessarily have to take everything that's in the warehouse. I can tell it that I only want 1 or 2 or 3 items, and I want it to transfer one way and not the other way, etc. So I can customize how I want that to run. The only other requirement for this to work is since it has a road connection, so you would need to connect it to a road. And the reason for that is both, in case you have a fire, you want to make sure you put it out. But more importantly, you also will have to supply this structure with fuel. So if you're playing on an energy management game where that option is turned on, that is, you have to worry about vehicle fuel, this will absolutely have to be supplied with gas. If you don't supply it with gas, the forklifts will only work for a small period of time, and once they're out of gas, you essentially stop any type of good exchange. So, what are the pros and the cons of this method? Well, generally speaking, if you have a large industrial area that has multiple buildings connected, you really will have to rely on forklifts. There's just no way around it. You want to really try to minimize their use, though, because the forklifts are relatively inefficient, so they can only transfer just about over 1 ton of a product in most cases. And so, if this sells 12 tons of food, and even if I have 12 tons of food in this warehouse, you can imagine that would take 12 trips. So it's not really an efficient system. I can chain all of these together, so if we delete this warehouse, we can pretend that I have another connection over here, and one over here, and then create another warehouse over here. But I don't want all these connections, but we can certainly delete that one. And so if I select my forklift, I will still be able to traverse all of this distance and load and unload my goods. However, it will add time because the forklift has to physically go all the way through this distance now, which is much longer, and then go back. And the other key concept is that one forklift station will only service up to 5 buildings, and that is a hard limit. So although you could connect more than 5 buildings by introducing additional connections here, 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 and here, and then additional ones on the periphery, if I have 6 buildings, I'm only limited to 5 of them that I can transfer goods between. And so, again, you want to utilize the ability to do the free passive good exchange between 2 buildings as much as possible to get over all of these limitations. So we're going to have to delete all of these plans. Good. And let's see how we would go about this. So here is our grocery store, and it has 2 inputs. Now I know that the one input that I want is meat, since it sells meat, and I want to be able to store meat, since it sells a very small quantity of meat. So if we go into the food and crop option, we have a meat storage building, which stores 75 tons of meat. So if I select this, again, it has 1 road and 2 factory connections. So by connecting this, and hopefully straightening it out a little bit, nope, maybe straightening it out a little bit, well, one more time. Let's see if 3rd time's a charm. Alright, so by doing this, I have assured that I will be able to, whatever is in this meat storage will automatically go into my grocery store. So we can connect this road. And now we are able to directly, if need be, have a refrigerator truck bring meat and supply this, and it'll automatically supply my grocery store without having to devote a forklift to it. So if we go back to our factory connection, we can see that we have one here and one there. So what are the other goods we need? Well, this will also sell food, clothes, and electronics. So I can go to my storage menu and look at a warehouse, and we can see that warehouse indeed stores food and clothes and electronics. So all I need is a warehouse, and that should take care of all of my needs. So if I place this right here, it should theoretically supply all of the things that my citizens demand. However, for reasons I don't fully understand, this particular square system does not work. And I think it's something the developers should be aware of. I think it's a quirk of the game or possibly a bug, but for whatever reason, this will not load. And so restart. So how do we connect all of these items? Well, we have our storage warehouse will store food and clothes, but not meat. And the only way that we can get meat by train, which is something I like to explore for the future, is a cargo train station. Now, the cargo train station loads a little bit of everything. However, it does not have any significant amount of storage. So you can see, for instance, it can only store half a ton of food. However, the cargo station, again, using the same mechanic of factory connections, does connect to any other structures and either is able to supply them by the forklift mechanic or by passive transfer. And so, if we place our system here, we know that we're not able to put in meat to our warehouse, but we are able to put the other goods into our warehouse. So what we can do is place this such that we have a direct connection to our meat storage. Like so. And so if a train comes in and starts to unload, it'll automatically fill up our meat storage, and the meat storage will then automatically feed into the grocery store. And in order for us to unload the other contents, such as food and clothes and electronics, we'll have to build a warehouse, because that's the only large structure that stores a large amount of these items. So we can then put in for a warehouse, and this would be the system that I would design. So you have your connection that supplies both the warehouse, and then the warehouse supplies the grocery store, and all of these transfers are passive. And so this system would assure maximum efficiency that would not cause us to rely on forklifts. You can see that you have a rail connection in the warehouse. You could actually deliver everything that the warehouse holds by rail and then deliver meat separately. There's no rail connection to a meat storage. However, it's your choice. So you can certainly have two trains, one running just meat and one running other, just the things that are sold in the shopping center. But for convenience, I usually just have one route that supplies everything in one go. And so that would be a nice example of a future-proof shopping destination. And now that that's done, let's go ahead and build this. So I will just finish this first building for now. And then we'll have to finish all of these. there we go. And so for now, we'll have to purchase our own, purchase supplies from other countries. And so there's an option to purchase using dollars or rubles. Because we're going to sell oil for dollars, I think it makes the most sense to use dollars. And we can either do a manual purchase, which means we just buy a one-time amount. Otherwise, we can set up a purchase plan. And the purchase plan purchases items if we have less than this amount of a good. So in this case, if I select 4.8, if I make my own food but not enough, anytime that my storage is less than 4.8, it will automatically purchase 1 ton. Again, keep it above that. If I fill it up, if I keep it filled and it does not go below 4.8, it will not fire. So yeah, this is fine. So we can approve this plan, and we can already see that we have citizens going into our store, even though it doesn't have power. So we'll pause here. And the next thing we have to do is just to make sure we have power. So again, similar to what we did in the end of episode 1, we need to have a power station. So I'll have one just over here. Well, let's see here. So we'll also have to build a bus station. So we'll do that. And yeah, we'll put that here. And then just to future-proof this, I'll probably put this one up here, because that would reach most things up here. So yeah, so somewhere, if we extend this road, we can then put this up here. So this will capture all of this area. And that way we still follow our rule that we don't have one substation supplying all of these structures, because then we run the risk of brownouts, especially if we use more watts than we can get with our highest capacity medium wire. And so, because this is a relatively large distance away from our medium wire system, we could drag the medium wire from our transformer all the way over here to there, but that would actually not be efficient. We would lose power, and we would only have one medium wire, and that's simply not enough to supply all of these structures, and the structures we'll build. So what we have to do is drag over our high voltage power line, which we split up here in advance. And once we drag it, we'll put up another transformer down here, and then we can have multiple medium voltage wires running to supply our substations. So because they're on this side, I'm just going to put it down here. So we have our power transformer, and what I'm going to do is I'll put it like so. We then can take our medium voltage wire, and again I take the highest wattage, and then we can, oops, let me delete that. So we can drag these. So that's one, and this one up here. And we can actually drag it through here, so that's nice. We're not really wasting any space. And going down to the second system. And then we select the high voltage option, and we have these running here. So this is our splitter, so we can take this and run it down. And we'll probably cross over here since we have to go on the other side of the road and connect it to here. So there we go. Since we do have a plan, obviously, for more electricity down the line, I'm just going to go ahead and put a split right here. And again, future-proofing. Since I know I'll need this anyway, I might as well do it now instead of paying to construct this line and then having to bulldoze it and pay more money to create this. And then this does need a supply, so I think what we can do... road access, so I think we can extend this road and then just put this road here. And for now, I can just delete that part. Alright, so that would be our plan. Now, I did say I need a bus station here, and that's not negotiable. I know that I will need to have, once we set up an oil industry over in this area, I will definitely need to transport workers. So I think I'm going to clear this a little bit out so I have room for a bus station. So that's under infrastructure. And there's a bus platform. So there's a large bus platform and a small bus platform. You can see that the small bus platform fits 230 passengers and the large one 500 passengers. All things being equal, we're obviously going to go for the bigger one because, again, future-proofing is kind of my thing. And so, again, we want to make sure that the bus platform is accessible to all our future residents. So let's check how far this is away from these buildings. So if we check this shopping center and click on the walking distance, you can see that I'm just about 260 meters away. And so again, remember that the limit that the citizens will walk is 400 meters. So I want to make sure that all of my key infrastructure is within that particular distance. So I know that if I put a bus station here, it will assure me that all of my citizens will be able to get all of their needs met at the shopping center and get on the bus. And that will be true for anything down here. So let's select the large bus station. So there we go. And now we want to make sure that we have enough footpaths to connect everything. So I'll put a footpath there, a footpath there, and I'll probably just create some over here just for appearance's sake. You can certainly change these later, but this way I have a direct connection to anything that any of these residents want to reach. So you can see here, okay, there we go. So that doesn't look the best, but it will suffice for now. And so now we have our shopping center, which supplies all of our citizens' needs. We will have a bus station that will transport them to our industrial area. And we have our buildings to get them to work. So the additional thing we need is a school, a kindergarten, and sports. So, because the citizens need to have all of those needs met, again, we have to think that that has to be within that walking range limit. And so what I usually do is I put all the other things that they need to have met on the other side of my transport and shopping hub. And so I think if we put things in the periphery here, they'll still be able to walk to all of those things, but that will allow me to build additional buildings that are nearest to food in transportation that won't essentially waste space. If I ended up building a school and sports platforms and playgrounds over here, I only have the ability to then put buildings mostly up here, and then I know that those buildings will at some point not even reach either of these structures, and I'll need to build another grocery store, and I certainly don't want to do that. And so that's really the strategy, again, that you have to have with this game, is you have to be cognizant of all of the things that go into determining how your citizens get around and what their limits are. And so let's put this into practice. So I'll finish this road. So we can just create a road going down here and down there and connect it. So we'll have a each front. I'll cancel these for now. And from experience, I know that if I place items over here, that's basically the same 400-meter distance to these residents. I actually don't like that. Let me make that. Ooh, that's not straight at all. So let me try that again. So we'll put something like... There we go. That's better. That's much better. So, right, so then if I place a second row of buildings here, and then I can put buildings here, and then eventually a connection here. If I place all of my equipment that I mentioned down here, I know that everyone will be able to access it, and they'll still be able to access the grocery store and the bus. So I think that's what we'll do. So we'll start with the school. And so again, we have footpaths and a road connection. So footpath, so we can place it like this, such that the well, it doesn't really matter because we have a footpath here. So yeah, either one's fine. We can just place it here. So that's going to be our school. Let's extend this. And then we know that we'll definitely need multiple kindergartens in the future. We'll have a central one, so one can be here. Again, it has a footpath going up. So we do want to make sure we have some room. We're not sacrificing all this empty space. So if I put it here, all this other space will be wasted. So I want to make sure it's really close to the intersection. Like that. And then the other thing we have to worry about are playgrounds, which are over here. So we have a tennis playground and a football playground. So I think those can be, we can place two of them. So if we have a road that they can go, and then we'll have a little footpath somewhere down here. And so we can place our little football playground here and here. And so I'll do with the footpaths is I'll come down here and come down there and there. And then that way I can connect my school and my playground. And I can connect my kindergarten, and if they really want to, they can also go like that. And then we'll do the same thing here. So this is our intersection. Let's see, so we'll put this one like that so that anyone from here can access this, and anyone from here can access this. So we'll have to temporarily move these power lines. So again, I'm glad I did not finalize them because that would have been wasted money. And so we'll put this down here. And then again, run this down the center. So again, this power line will have to be temporarily removed. So we have not committed to building it yet. And so then we have our road. And then we connect that up here. Although I don't like that angle. So something like that. Okay, perfect. And then for future proofing, well, actually, no, we can do it now. So then we can put down tennis playgrounds, since I don't think a football playground will fit. Well, barely fit, but then we won't have a footpath connection, so you can see it's not giving me the option for a footpath connection between these. So tennis playground would be more preferable because it's much smaller. And then I can still connect the footpaths. So we can put 2 tennis playgrounds here. And what we can do is create another path here, another path here. And if I had placed a football playground, I wouldn't have this option. It would have been too close. And then I can just put another footpath here. And if they want to connect through the back, they have that option as well. So see, it's saying too sharp of a turn. So let's see if we can cancel and redo this. We can probably do... There we go. So we can do that, and I'll just do the same thing here so it looks as symmetrical as possible. And again, you can see it's already giving me an error, so it's in too sharp of a turn. So I can probably do is drop a perpendicular and then connect the 2, and there we go. And we can delete this. So this is a classic example of the game being very finicky in particular, and again, it's an early access release, but I really wish that they would really, tighten up this behavior, because just because the game tells you you can't make a straight connection does not mean that you can't find a way to eventually fit it in. Okay. So I think that looks good. We kind of have all the basics for our citizens. I'm not giving them alcohol just yet. So the main thing we need to do is reconnect our power supply planned for this area. So we'll do that, and that, and that. Good. And at this point, I think we can finalize this construction. So so all the footpaths, or selected footpaths, everything in white can actually be constructed with rubles or dollars immediately by using this one of these buttons, and it will cost 2,000 rubles, so we can pay for that. We can pay for the electricity. This is the large electricity, and then the small electricity, the medium electricity poles. This will need to be constructed individually. That one needs to be constructed, and as well as the road. Now, again, I could have constructed this, and this too. Now, I could have constructed this road right away by dragging it and automatically paying for it, but then I would not have the option of editing it. And so again, that's something that's going to be your style of play, and some people don't want to mess around with all of these clicks. Some people like to really plan things out. I would say that if you have a relatively simple area, you could get by with just building everything, and if you're not happy with it, demolishing it, since it's not going to cost a lot of money. However, if you have a very complex area, then you definitely want to do this planning, since it'll be very costly for you to fix any mistakes. Okay. So let's see. And I apologize for the how loud this is. We still have these sections. Alright, and we'll do the bus station and the connection. Looks like this didn't get built, so we need... Oh no, I'm sorry. And then we just need to build all of these. see that we're spending quite a bit of money. We're down to, this is still paused, so we're going to be down probably to $1 million. But we need all of these structures, otherwise our citizens will not be happy, and they'll try to escape. So this is kind of the minimum typical setup that you would need. I would only say that if you wanted to save money, you don't have to give them electronics and clothes right away, but if you don't build that large shopping center, then you have to build individual stores. So that savings is not really that great. And then it's much harder to fit it in with a unified supply system. So we just have a couple of areas. I wish there was a button to just select everything and click complete, but they like a little mouse selector, but they don't allow you to do that just yet. But I think that would be one request for developers. So something like City Skylines, where you're able to click and drag and select multiple things, and then you just have one button to finish this, other than clicking everything one by one. Alright, so everything is complete. Let's pause. So we know everything's working because we have power. And we have power here. And here, and there, and here, and there. Alright. So we know that everything is working. We have power at all of our power interchangers and our substations. So let's look at this closer. So my shopping center has to have people employed, and it can employ up to 25 workers, and obviously these workers are needed to sell the items to citizens that come in. Now, I'm able to control the number of workers with these two buttons, and since we're just starting out and have a very small population, I'm just going to employ the minimum number of workers, which is 5, and that'll accommodate 22 shoppers. None of these other structures require workers, but I do need workers for both my kindergarten and my school. And so again, because we have a really small population, I'll just put this at 2, and this at 2. And you can see here that this requires just regular workers, that is basic education. You can barely make it out, but it's basically a person wearing a construction outfit. And then I have the same thing here, but for teachers I have what looks like male icons with a suit and tie and a little briefcase. And so that designates workers with a university education. And so the only citizens we can teach are individuals with a university of education, which again we can access through population statistics. And we can see out of our 161 people who already moved into our one building, we have 9 with the University of Education. And so we should have enough people to work as teachers. If I did not have anyone working as teachers, my school would not work until I either had people go to college to get an education or imported workers. So to look at that option, we have our building, which has a maximum of 179 people. Again, we see 2 people here who have a university education, and if you're not sure, you can hover over them, and you can see it says both of them have a university education versus all these others who look like construction workers have a basic education. And it says 1 equals 5, so that means one of these icons corresponds to 5 people, and if we click, we actually see the raw count. And so then it tells us the needs of this particular building. So this is the same type of menu as our general population, but this is unique to just this building. So you can see we just started and everything's been on pause, but for the most part, people are mostly happy. We can also look to see how many different characteristics our building has, so how many productive age workers, how many babies, children, and adults living with parents. We also have their demands, so it says that most workers don't have a job, so that makes them unhappy. You again have, since we selected the option for complex education, it says poor workers can't work because there is no kindergarten. So that this does not exist if you play on the simplified version. However, our version is the complex. So this is something we need to worry about, which is why we built our kindergarten here. And then children can't go to school. And so that's necessary because we need our children who don't have an education to get at least a basic education. Otherwise, they grow up and are not able to work. So how do I ensure that my workers go to the right place for their job? So I can either leave it on autopilot. So right now it says unspecified citizens decide where they think working is best, or if I click on this icon, I can select buildings where the citizens can go and I assign them jobs. So they can only work in these buildings. So kindergarten and teacher, and school teacher, and the grocery store. So I cannot select places where workers cannot work, such as the meat storage facility, since it doesn't have any job slots. If I select the bus stop, then that automatically tells the workers to go and wait for a bus, and that their job is going to be somewhere along the bus route. And so that's how you are able to get workers from a town to a distant place of work. So if we built a bus station down here, we would run a bus from our main platform down to this area. And if I tell the bus route, set up the bus route to let all of my workers out down here, that's how they will get to work from one place to the other. So since we don't have a bus right now, I'm not going to have this option, but I do want them to go to all these other structures. And so if we look at the breakdown, we have 5 workers in the small shopping center, and then 2 in the kindergarten, and 5 in the school. So we want to make sure we have the right number of citizens. You don't have to get this exactly right. If you, say, have 90% of the workers designated to work, say, at the shopping center, once it fills up, they'll automatically go to the other places. But you kind of want to just ballpark it. So in this case, our shopping center has the same number of workers as our school. So I would go with 30%. Let's do 40%. 40%. There's 38% and 22% for the kindergarten, so that's about right because the kindergarten is just less than half of these two. And so that'll automatically allow all of our workers to go, and they'll automatically select the people with education for buildings that require education, such as the school. Now, if I did not have my educated workers, or I did not have workers at all, I would have to import workers. And so that's done by one of 2 ways. I can either relocate workers from another building. So if I had another building next door, or I had a building across the map, I would be able to click on it and then relocate a number of individuals and tell them essentially that they have to move to my new building. And that's fine. It's a recognized game mechanic. It does change your total number of workers in the original building, of course, and so you just have to plan to make sure you didn't, say, move all of your educated workers out from a town that requires them. If, however, I don't have any towns, if I'm playing on a pre-populated map, or I don't have any other buildings that have free workers, I basically have 2 options. I can invite immigrants from the Third World, invite immigrants from the Soviet bloc, or invite experts. And so again, these 2 options are for relocating citizens from a building on your map. So you can either relocate any citizens, or you can relocate just university-educated citizens. So if I buy immigrants from the third world, I generally do not use this option. So this is the cheapest option, as you can see, compared to the other ones. But third world immigrants do not have an education. So as I alluded to in my first episode, if you buy immigrants from a third world country, they will arrive with no education. They will have needs that you will need to meet, and essentially representing a cost, and they will not be able to work until they get an education. So they'll have to go to school, and it'll be quite a bit of game time before they're able to get a basic education and work. If I invite immigrants from the Soviet bloc, you can see that they're about 4 times as expensive, and these represent people with a basic education. So they will be able to do virtually all of your jobs except for the ones that just require university education. So for instance, they could not teach in my classroom. They could staff my school, but they could not teach in the classroom. And for this category, I would need to collect the last option, and that's inviting experts from the Soviet bloc. So these are a little bit more expensive, not a lot, but they're still 5 times more compared to the third world immigrants, and there's also half the number. But this is the only way to expedite getting experts into your country. So, given the fact that we have sufficient university-educated individuals in our building currently, I think we're good. So I'm just going to let the game run and let everything finish, and you can observe how everything works. So you can see our citizens walking out, and they're going to their place of work, which we designated. So you can appreciate that you have most people going up here, since we have 2 job sites, and then some of them go over here to the grocery store. I'm not sure why they're going to the bus stop. They're not supposed to do that unless... Yeah, so we'll get into this now. So they are waiting for a bus. However, you can essentially select who is allowed to go here. Now, you have 3 options: workers, passengers, and students. So workers is self-explanatory. If I assign in my option of where should citizens be going to work, if I click on this bus stop, those are the people that go off to their jobs. So since we don't have any buses or any industry areas that are far away, we'll just select this option. Passengers we've covered, so these are people in their free time. They're the ones that are looking to fulfill their needs, such as getting food, or culture, or sports. If I did not have a grocery store and my grocery store was far away and the only way to reach it was by bus, I could leave my passengers here and then have a bus that took them to shop. I can do the same thing with a train. However, we don't have that either, so I'm going to deselect that. And the same thing with students. This mostly applies to college students, so if I had people who needed to go to college, and the college was far away, I would have a train or a bus taking them there, and then I would select this, but I don't, so we're not going to bother. Now, passengers, even though this has the same menu for passengers, I cannot actually tell passengers where they can go. So while I can tell workers which bus to take or which transportation to take to their job, I cannot do anything for passengers. I can, however, tell students where to go to school. So both at a bus stop, if a bus drops them off from another town and they need to go to a school, I can tell them from this menu. And when I go into my building menu and select children, I can also specify where they have to go to school. And so in this case, we want 100% of our kids who live in this building to go to this school. We can't actually send anyone to kindergarten because that automatically is decided by the parents. And you can see that for babies, I can see how many babies I have who need kindergarten but not have an option to send them. And again, these other 2 options don't work. So the only people that I can send to a job are my citizens, adult citizen workers, and my children to school. And again, for the transportation options, such as the bus and train stations, I can tell workers where to go, children where to go, but not passengers. So the passengers will automatically do stuff on their own. If I don't want them hanging out, losing time at the bus stop, I can deselect this option. So let's continue. And we can see that we definitely have people joining our school. So we have students in the class, we have our teachers and staff. And then we can also see that we have staff in the kindergarten. And hopefully we will soon have our first clients. I did forget to say, so we also do have staff for the playgrounds, so we might as well take care of that now. So I will add for this building to supply people to go to work to all these playgrounds. And this is just to staff them, so that could be like 5% because we only need one person. So we'll do 5, yeah, 6, 5, 5, yeah, that's fine. And again, most of our people will go to the school and the shopping center. And so again, you see here, if I don't have enough people with education, the actual building will tell me that there's not enough staff. So I think since we're just got started, the game takes a little bit of time to ramp this up. But if this persists and you keep getting this message, then you will need to increase the number of workers, or possibly import the correct workers if you don't have if you have uneducated immigrants. So we'll just let that run. So I'll finish this. And the final concept I'd like to introduce is the vehicle depot. So we will select a site that's near our road. So I think, let's see, so something over here would be good. And so this is called the Road Vehicle Depot, and this is what it looks like. So this is a building that is absolutely required for you to build any sort of road vehicle. So if a vehicle can go on the road, it will come from the road depot. And so the first thing we'll do is we'll get a truck that'll export our oil. So let's see. So we're going to build a train track down here. So I want to place it over on this side, but I don't want it to interfere with the power line. So perfect. So we can see that the game allowed it to build right there. And then we'll create a road connection on both sides. And I should have checked if this was going to be supplied with power. It's probably not, but we can double check that. So we'll build our road connection and build the depot. And let's see if we need to power it. No, we don't. So yeah, so this works on its own. So now, again, this will hold up to 8 vehicles, however, at any one time. But if a vehicle's on the road, I don't need to account for it. So we're going to go ahead and buy a... so these are all the vehicles that you can buy. So you can see we have buses, cement trucks, harvesters, covered hull for different products, fire trucks. We have dumper vehicles for resources, bulldozers, excavators. So we really have a ton of choices, and we actually will need some combination of all these vehicles down the line. At this point, I just want to buy the oil vehicle, which I am seeing here as oil tank. And so you can see there's several options. The options differ based on the year that it's available, the country where it's made, and how much resource it can carry. So we'll go ahead and purchase this one so it can hold the most. And this will be our exporting vehicle. So what we'll do here is create a route, taking oil from here and exporting it. Now this road will have to be finished. Alright, so for us to do this, we click on the vehicle, and we click on Add New Stop. We select our first stop, which is our oil storage terminal. And here we tell it to load the vehicle at this first stop and load it with oil. This only has oil, so I actually don't have to specify it, but I like to specify it just so if I have a lot of vehicles, I know what this is doing at a quick glance. And we want to load 100% of the vehicle's capacity, which is 12 tons. So after it fills this, I then want it to go over here and unload 100% of anything, and we can leave that as is. It's not carrying anything else, but if I said to load 50% oil and then go somewhere else and load 50% fuel, I can, and I wanted to sell both items, I would just select this as a shortcut. So this looks good, so we can launch it and take a look. So off we go. And we have our very first vehicle making its maiden voyage. And this will actually give us a first cinematic of our soon-to-be glorious socialist paradise. And I especially like the music. This we can actually rotate this so you can see the details up close, which I find really cool. Now, you may notice that we did build a gravel road, and so the gravel road is the cheapest road next to a dirt road. All of these roads have different speed limits. So the gravel road, if we click on the infrastructure tab, you can see that it has a maximum speed of 60 kilometers an hour. The dirt road is 35 kilometers an hour. It does not cost any money to build, but is by far the slowest, so I usually like to go for gravel roads, except for areas such as farms. If we did invest the money and create an asphalt road, you can see that the speed limit is nearly double. And if I add an asphalt road with street lights, what that does is at nightfall, it guarantees that I have the same speed during day or night, versus I drop down to a speed of 60 for my asphalt road during nighttime. If you do not select the day-night cycle, then you always have this 110 kilometer per hour speed. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think we will eventually want to upgrade our roads, but at this point we're all about saving money. So we've loaded 12 tons of oil. You can see that we're full, and it's heading over to the custom house. So these are not the best visuals in the world, but they certainly get the job done, which I think is modus operandi of the developer. So you can see our sturdy Soviet electrical supply system in all of its glory. Carrying bourgeois Western electricity to the masses. But soon enough that will be replaced with 100% good old-fashioned Soviet electricity. So there we are. We're arriving at the custom house, and we have $534 worth of oil that we will shortly receive. And you can see that it's up, increasing our budget amount up here. And we are done. So now it's going to go back and head over to repeat this cycle. So given the fact that this is a vehicle and it requires, just on time, it requires fuel. As you see here, this icon means it ran out of fuel, and so we cannot export anything, or it cannot go about its route before getting fuel. And so that's a perfect segue into the fuel system, which is the last thing that I wanted to cover. So we will need to build gas stations based on the option of vehicle fuel. The gas stations tend to create a lot of traffic, so I generally try to put them definitely outside the city limit, because you do not want a large line of cars blocking the road and blocking other vehicles from getting in between. So I think we can build a gas station down here. And what I would do is I would actually do a little roundabout, or ellipse about, and create a one-way gas station. So if we zoom in, we can see that this one-way gas station is facing to the right, since the arrow has a direction. And so this just assures efficiency, that the cars do not interfere and try to interfere with the traffic by exiting this on the same direction they came in. So we'll create that, and then we'll finish the road, so that way that they have a nice way of going through this roundabout, basically not coming into contact with other traffic. And we can also make sure that this road is one way. So this has to be finished. So let's finish that, and finish that, and that, and finish this. And so we'll need to finish this road as well, otherwise the car will not be able to get back on the road after refueling. And so now we'll specify that this is a one-way. This type of road cannot be one-way. Alright, that must be only for asphalt. So it looks like gravel roads cannot be one-way, so I did learn something. And finally, we see that there's no energy supply to this, so we will need to build another substation. So we can put one over here. So our original substation is pretty far away there, so yeah, so we can build one right there. Actually, we'll do one, yeah, we can just do one like right there. Connect it, build that, put our medium voltage from our transformer, build that, and build a substation. Should have power. Yep. And so the last thing we need to do is, we don't make any fuel, so we'll have to come up with a fuel plan. So again, it's the same principle. We'll auto purchase, and basically say if there's less than 10 tons of fuel, it'll buy enough fuel to replace this. If we have our own fuel and it stays above 10 tons, it will not refill any of this by spending money. Since we're not making fuel, we're going to be buying this, and I'll buy this in dollars. Since again, we're exporting oil, so we'll hopefully offset some of our costs. And now we should see that our building, that our vehicle, the oil tanker, should be heading, yep. So you can see that it no longer has the empty gas symbol and it's heading over to our gas station to fuel. You can tell that it's out of gas since it has a gas fuel meter that's at 0 liters, and so it will not do any work until this is back to full. So I believe that this episode should give you a good idea of all of the main mechanics, including the vehicle depot, how to form routes for vehicles, in the case of our oil export system, and the basics for building and organizing towns, organizing a shopping area, as well as providing citizens with education and with sports. And as you see, our glorious populace heading off to become educated and healthy, and I think we will screenshot this and end right here. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you found this useful. Please send me your comments. I'm definitely happy to hear back from you, and I will hopefully see you in episode number 3. До свидания.